So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our session. One of the last sessions of the day, so it's us holding you back from the bar. But I'm really glad you are here because it's really important that you are able to listen to what's going to be shared today. And I'm really delighted to be joined by Dr. David Unwin and Dr. Lucy Williamson. And we're going to be talking about Ozempic and other weight loss drugs and how we might also look at the benefits of organic food in a similar way. And it's going to be a very interesting and enlightening discussion. But really, this is somewhat of a follow-on from a session we ran at Groundswell last year. I see some of the faces that were there last year. We called Regenerating the Human, which you can look back on YouTube and watch back. And that would be well worth doing. It's not a requirement to have seen it before coming to here. But there was some other very useful information during that talk that we won't be covering this time. Did that with David as well, and also Dr. Jenny Goodman. But during that session, I stood up in front of everybody and explained that 2 years ago I'd met David, and he'd suggested I was carrying a bit too much weight around my waist, but quite politely. And over that year, we talked a lot, and I really changed my diet. And last year was 10 kilos lighter than when I first met David. And really, I'd done that through cutting out ultra-processed foods and cutting out a lot of carbs as well, and really doing a lot of intentional research into what I was eating and really starting to learn and understand my gut, which was really a really interesting journey to start to go on. So this was me. This is my weight chart, if you like, and the lowest point was a year ago. And stood before you now, I'm 5 kilos heavier than I was last year, which I feel somewhat of a fraud stood here. But it's been a very interesting journey again, because I've started to learn what works, what doesn't, and certain foods and alcohol have started to creep back into my diet. And before I knew it, Christmas was upon us, and I was like, crikey, I've put on a lot of weight again, and I hadn't really noticed it. Anyway, the last few weeks I made a bit of a last attempt effort to get back down to look reasonably slim on stage. But it's also really good context, because whilst I'd seen what had happened to me, and I was really trying to take care and think about that, I was meeting more and more people that were starting to use weight loss drugs. And from Jeremy Clarkson, I was reading, he's been using them, and then I was getting a haircut the other week, and my hairdresser was saying she'd bought some off the internet. She was on them for 2 months so she could prepare for her holiday. And I was like, crikey, it's getting pretty casual with use of these things. And that really, my upward line there is really what has spurred us to talk about what's the second step, what's phase 2, and what's going on with these weight loss drugs. So David is going to help us pick that apart. And then Lucy is going to highlight some really exciting information about organic and pasture-fed foods that can play a really important role in our diet. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to David. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to introduce myself, I'm an NHS GP. I've looked after the same population of 10,000 patients just north of Liverpool for about 40 years. So a very, very long time. And so we're thinking about the weight loss jabs, and we're thinking here about Russ. What should we do to help him? What should we do? Should we all put together and pay for him to have the weight loss jabs? And would that be a good idea? No, terrible idea. But it's a genuine question that people all over the world are asking. They've heard about these jabs. What they often haven't thought about are the pros and cons, and they haven't got it in context, and they don't know how the jabs work. So the reason I've come first is to give you context for this very important discussion. How do these jabs, what are they good for? What are they bad for? How do they fit in? So at the moment, what we've got is we've got West Streeting talking about, weight loss jabs for the unemployed. We've got the BBC saying that Ozempic could delay aging. There we are. It can cure dementia. And it could halve the risks of cancer. So it all sounds a bit hypey, doesn't it, really? And it actually makes me nervous. And what's going on at the moment is very large numbers of people throughout the country are accessing these injections not via doctors, but via online pharmacists. And they're getting these drugs. All they've got to do is supply a photo of themselves and pay the money. But sometimes it's not a photo of themselves, it's a photo of somebody else. So for the first time that I'm aware of, people are buying very powerful drugs without any kind of medical supervision. And that worries me. That worries me. So I just wanted to explain how the drugs work. So GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide. GLP-1 is actually a naturally occurring hormone that every one of you in the room produces anyway in response to eating. So it's one of the ways that if you ate, I don't know, a huge steak, why are you full at the end of that? Because your gut has produced GLP-1 hormone that signals you are full, stop eating. So the drugs are made like the GLP-1 hormone. It isn't the GLP-1 hormone, it's a drug that's like it. So these drugs mimic your naturally produced GLP-1 hormone. What is different, is we're using huge doses, very big doses, much bigger doses than you produce. The hormone you produce will last about half an hour or an hour, and then maybe you're hungry again. But these drugs are given once a week, just once a week, in big dosages. That's so different. How do they work? And this is really important for you to understand the possible side effects. They really slow down the digestion of food, so it takes a lot longer for food to get through your system. And it also reduces your appetite in your head. So there's at least those two things. They do other things as well. The GLP-1 drugs have a really interesting history. Some of you will know I'm fascinated by reptiles, and I would love to have a Gila monster as a pet. But this is a Gila monster, and the disadvantage of the Gila monster is it's a very rare thing because it's a venomous lizard. And the bite of the Gila monster hurts, and it hurts for a very long time because in the venom is an incredibly long-acting GLP-1-like drug. So they took the Gila monster venom and took out the poisonousness of it, and that was the history of the GLP-1 drugs. And that is why the GLP-1 drugs are so long-acting, because their derivation is not a human derivation, it's from the Gila monster. So that is the most important fact. It's very long-acting. So I have so many patients telling me they're on the drug, and they say, I suppose I should have told you, Dr. Unwin. I'm astonished because they're paying £170 a month, many of these people. People who previously told me they were short of money. They're so desperate to sort out their weight problem. This is almost like another mortgage or something. At the moment, you need to know these drugs are only legal for 2 years. So you can't take them indefinitely. So the first important question is what happens when you come off the drugs? And we know that because the drug companies have already looked into this, and this is a study here. If you look at the graph, the beginning of it is weight going down while they're on the drug semaglutide. And then at the dashed line, they are randomly allocated to a placebo, or to continue on the semaglutide? And can you see that from the day that you stop semaglutide, your weight starts to come back? So that really is a most important fact. You're not losing weight permanently. It's only while you're on the medication. So at best, at the moment, this drug represents a temporary opportunity to learn something. That's at best, because you can't legally stay on it beyond 2 years. Now, this is the thing that really scares me. When I talk to my patients, I've never talked to a single person that knew we've had 82 deaths associated with these drugs. This is published in the British Medical Journal. Not a single person, when they got the drug from the online pharmacy, knew that some of the side effects can be very, very serious. So for me, there's an ethical problem that we are doing something to people without them knowing the pros and cons. Now, of course, the great majority of people do not die taking these drugs. But if that was somebody you loved, you would feel very, very distressed if there was no informed consent, if people didn't know the risk they may be taking. So my patients just believe, well, you just pay for this, use the jab, and I'll look great for Christmas, or I'll look great for the wedding, or I want to put on a bikini for summer. It's rather more serious than that. So there we are. We should be thinking about, surely anything in life, important decisions require weighing up the pros and the cons of what you do. How can you know that if you don't know what the side effects of the drug are, and if you receive the drug anonymously through the post? It's worrying, because what if you're on other medication? It may well affect how the pill works, for instance. It may well interact with drugs you're on for your blood pressure. So this is a very odd situation where you can just get powerful drugs through the post without a doctor. So let's just think about for a moment, why are my patients who are very overweight, how has this happened? It's to do with being overfed and undernourished. The World Health Organization have said there is a crisis where people are eating too much food, resulting in weight gain, but they're undernourished because the food has such poor nutritional density that they're eating lots of food, but they're vitamin deficient. I've stopped counting the number of my patients that are deficient in, for instance, folic acid. I've stopped measuring it because so many young people are deficient in vitamins. So imagine I'm explaining to you that this jab takes away your appetite. Also, you have a weight problem because of a poor diet. So how is suddenly you're going to eat maybe half as much food? But surely you can understand that if you were vitamin deficient before, now you're seriously vitamin deficient because you're just eating less food. So this means that suddenly the choice of food you eat becomes really important because you're not eating much. So you've got to pack those nutrients in. Otherwise, you'll eat less. If there isn't enough protein, there's some evidence these jabs can cause muscle loss because your body starts melting your own muscles for protein. There's also a worry about calcium and bone density, because if your diet is calcium deficient, your body goes to your bones. That's your bank account of calcium. So if you're not taking enough calcium for 2 years, you'll raid your own bones. This is very serious. So food choices, they matter a lot anyway, but if you were to use one of the fat jabs, they matter more, and that's why you would need more guidance, not less. Against this background, we have a historical shift in the nutrient density of our foods. So this is zinc in one graph and iron in another. And we're looking at both rice and wheat in both cases. And we're looking from the 1960s to now. And what's happening is the amount of iron and zinc in these various cultivars has gone down by 30%. Nutrient density of our food is dropping. It's becoming harder and harder for you to eat a diet that has enough nutrients in it. I'd go further. I'd say for magnesium, it's now just about impossible for an older person to eat food that has enough magnesium in it because of how we are growing the crops, because of how we're looking after the soil. And that's really why an old doctor is at an event with loads of farmers. Because what you do and what you're trying to do with the soil and trying to do with nutrient density is really, really important. We're losing ground year by year with nutrient density. I love this study. This is work from New York. And it's Professor Beale. We're looking at what do women between the ages of 15 and 49 need to eat in terms of vitamin A, folate, vitamin B12, calcium, iron, and zinc. So what would you need to eat to get a third of your nutrient requirement for those vitamins in terms of portions of food? So this is a way of showing you nutrient density. And you've got some choices. So you could have 7 grams of liver. That's just under 2 teaspoons of liver would supply a woman between the age of 15 and 49 with a third of her daily requirement. Or, ladies, you could eat 4 kilos of refined grains 3 times a day. I'm really glad you get that. What would happen if you ate 4 kilos of refined grains 3 times a day? You would have a weight problem. And so nutrient density is really, really important. And it's interesting that in the study, they concluded the optimal sources of priority micronutrients, iron, zinc, calcium, folate, and vitamin A, B12, are animal source foods and dark green leafy vegetables. This happens to be the very same low-carb diet that my patients north of Liverpool are doing, and we're getting improvements in all markers for cardiovascular risk, and we are reversing diabetes and saving money on the drug budget. So nutrient density is a priority, and it's very interesting and very important. And maybe it's a way that farmers could be properly rewarded for the work that you do. Maybe I should pay more for food that is nutrient dense and food that there's been great care in how it's been grown. Thank you. And it's only then, if we shouldn't be paying less for food, it's really important. Perhaps we should pay more, but we could eat less of it. My patients eat about a third less food than the general public. They need less food because they're getting nutrient density. So they don't buy as much food, but what they do buy has got nutrient density. This is Kirsten. I love Kirsten. She is, well, look at the graph. She had normal care between 2016 and 2019. Can you see where it says normal care, average weight, 131 kilos? That was her weight during that time. And then a specialist thought she needs GLP-1 injections. And so she was injecting GLP-1 injections for 5 years at considerable cost to the NHS. And her average weight was about the same. She lost 1 kilo, that's all. She was still a dress size 28. And then last year, out of desperation, because she didn't lose any weight, she started showing an interest in why was she hungry, why was she heavy. And I did a really bad thing. I broke the rules and prescribed her a continuous glucose monitor so she knew what was putting up her blood sugar. And since then, she's gone down to a dress size 16. She's come off all her drugs. She was on drugs for blood pressure, drugs for her cholesterol, drugs for her diabetes. Now she's a well woman and she knows how to care for herself. The GLP-1 drugs did not help her. We don't know what that did to her bone density. We just don't know. But I do know it didn't help her diabetes and it didn't help her weight. And you can see the graph there. And the last bit, the low carb bit, she's a woman transformed. And she's put on an old jacket there to try and show you, she knows we're here today. She's proud. She's also given up cigarettes because you see, she's suddenly got the link between her behavior and her life and how she feels about herself. She's so proud. And her mum is dead proud too. Her mum comes with her every time to say, I can't believe it. Her mum loves her. And this is a woman who's learnt to eat nutrient-dense food, but less of it, and avoid stuff that puts up her blood sugar. Hence, some of you have got my teaspoon of sugar equivalent charts. She doesn't eat refined carbs. She doesn't eat food that puts up her blood sugar. She does eat loads more protein. She does eat green veg. So if you can see, she weighed 130 kilograms 4 years. She's now the lightest she's been for 32 years. And that wasn't the fat jab. It was her learning why she was hungry. And interestingly, she's less hungry now on the low carb diet than she was on the GLP-1. So isn't that interesting? And we're coming to the final point. Here's the magic, the wonderful magic. The correct diet stimulates your production of GLP-1. So a low-carb diet, instead of you paying £170 per month to get GLP-1 through the post, if you eat a nutrient-dense diet, a low-carb diet, you produce more GLP-1 and you're less hungry. Isn't that the answer? Nutrient-dense food, eat less of it. Work with nature. The whole idea of regenerative farming is you want to work with nature. My idea, I am a regenerative doctor. I need to work with the human physiology. And that's what I'm talking about. And I probably said, oh, hey, I've done a study. I've forgotten this. Yes. So what we did, we took people, very heavy people in America, and we gave them continuous glucose monitors and low-carb diets. And they're the people in the blue on the left. And we compared them both to semaglutide in different dosages. And the point that graph makes is that using low carb, 50 people over a year lost an average of 19 kilos in weight or 43 pounds. They lost as much weight as anybody does on the GLP-1. So this is our way of showing that with guidance and help and nutrient-dense food, maybe people don't need the GLP-1 drugs. Now, some people do. One of the things I would say, my wife Jen is in the front row, clinical psychologist. Some people are junk food addicts and really, really struggle to give up bread. That's one of the commonest foods. They struggle not to eat bread. They're eating it in the night. They're eating it, chips sometimes. For some of those patients, I am using GLP-1 because it helps stop the cravings. And the other patients, GLP-1 drugs can be very useful in diabetes, but I'm using lower dosages and I'm weighing up the pros and cons. So, my last slide. I would say, why not try a low-carb, nutrient-dense diet before you pay for GLP-1? If you are going to use GLP-1 drugs, please think about what you eat because it's really, really important. My last point, I know you're farmers, so growing, marketing and selling nutrient-dense food, I know it's a challenge and I think it should be rewarded. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And I should have said we will have a time for some Q&A at the end as well, so we can get into some more detail if anybody's interested. But now I'm going to hand over to Lucy for a different perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ, and thank you, David. Hi, everybody. Just really quickly, could I have a hand show as to how many farmers we actually have here? Fantastic. It's always helpful to know who we're speaking to. And anyone in education of any type? Yeah, and food providers. Great. Okay, and many more, I'm sure. But yeah, it's helpful just to know who I'm speaking to. So I'm going to very much sort of follow on with all those that brilliant information. Thank you, David. Just very quickly, for anyone who doesn't know, my background is as a vet, both in farm and small animal practice a very long time ago. So I've been lucky enough to experience the food system from both ends of the spectrum, from soil and livestock, right through to helping human health thrive. So it gives me quite a unique perspective, which is really, I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you. But my sort of key interest as a nutritionist is the connection between soil health and gut health, the quality of our food and how it impacts our overall health. So I'm very much sort of public facing with the work I do. I'm freelance, and this slide is just to kind of give you a little bit of a flavour of that. I'm going to do a whistle-stop tour of the gut microbiome, because I think you're probably interested to hear a little bit about that, but it's also interesting to understand how that impacts our weight control, which connects with what David's been talking about. And then I'm going to go on to talk about nutrient density of foods, particularly when they are farmed with nature. And what I really want to spend just a few important minutes on is the emerging evidence we have on dairy, because I love to shout out about dairy. It's a fabulous food. And I think one of the most important things that we can do as nutritionists is to give some clarity around what plant-based actually means. And it doesn't really mean exclusively plants. It means that 2/3 of the plate should be full of a variety of plants. That's really, really important for our health. But actually, animal protein is a really, really important source of nutrient-dense food for our health. I have a copy of this slide that I'm happy to hand out to anybody if you want to browse it at home. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it here, but it's a concept that I've been developing in just to try and help people to understand, help the general public understand that when we farm with nature, it's obviously this beautiful sort of circular One Health system. Grazing animals are really important in that system, the health of the soil and our own health. And the golden thread in all of this is microbes. So you can see that they're inside us. We each have 100 trillion gut microbes inside us right now, doing all sorts of really important things. But those microbes are just as important in the soil, and they're also really important in grazing animals. Otherwise, those animals wouldn't be able to produce meat and milk for us. And so there's a bit of a theme of microbes through the next few slides. So basically, when we think of really healthy soil or a really healthy gut microbiome inside us, we're talking about two really similar processes, and it's basically sort of ecosystem services. That ecosystem that's in the soil, we've also got it in our gut. And these are living systems, and whether microbes are in the soil or whether they're in our gut, they're doing three really vital things. They're unlocking nutrients for us. They're building resilience, which hopefully really resonates with farmers here today. Regenerative farming is all about building resilience. But they also drive really vital biological processes. So on the right-hand side of your screen is just a few of the conditions that we know that the gut microbiome is very much linked with. This is all from very, very robust, fairly new, but very robust science. So you'll see I've kind of highlighted weight control because that's a little bit more what we're talking about today. But also just at the bottom there where I've got inflammatory responses. So our gut microbiome is really vital in regulating inflammation that goes on in our body. And inflammation is at the root of many of the chronic conditions that, David, you've been talking about, type 2 diabetes, heart health, certain cancers, and many, many, many more. So when we're wanting to look after our gut health, what we're trying to do is eat, you'll all have heard about this, as many different plants as we can. So that word diversity, it's quite windy up here, hair in the mouth. Diversity is really, really as important with our gut microbes in that we want to eat a variety of plants. We want to encourage a really wide diversity of gut microbes, just like our own sort of wildflower meadow, as you would have if you're farming with nature. So, the wonderful thing about gut health is that it's a sort of hidden resource that we all have. It's a very accessible resource, but often we forget or we don't even know it's there. So before I go on to kind of pick up on the nutrient density side of regen food, if I can just call it that, or organic food. What is it about the gut microbiome that is so helpful when it comes to overweight and obesity? So the brilliant thing is, if we approach weight loss by the gut microbiome, we are using an approach that is long-lasting, it's sustainable, and again, it's a food-first approach rather than just throwing drugs at the problem. And what we are needing to do is make sure that we're eating nutrient-dense food which satisfies our appetite. The interesting thing is, when we look after our gut microbes, they produce thousands of beneficial chemicals which work with our biology. And it's kind of like carrying around your own mini pharmacy inside you. And one of the chemicals that they produce for us is the building blocks for the, guess what, GLP-1 hormone that David was just talking about. So when we nurture our gut microbiome, we're actually working with our very natural appetite mechanism that we all have, which would work really well for us if we can just manage to feed it the right kind of food. So our gut microbiome really vital in weight control, but also the type of foods that we need to eat. So fiber-rich plants really help that feeling of fullness as well. And one bit of research that I just wanted to draw to your attention, because it was quite sort of groundbreaking at the time. So I did my nutrition degree at King's College in London, which is where this research was done. And it was literally two groups of people, and one group were fed an ultra-processed diet, the other a much more wholesome diet, and both diets were ad lib. You could eat as much as they wanted. Both diets had exactly the same levels of nutrients and exactly the same levels of calories, but the group that were eating the ultra-processed foods put on a considerable amount of weight and wanted to keep eating, and compared to the others who, eating the wholesome food, just naturally actually didn't want to eat nearly as much. So what that told us was that it's as well as slightly confusing, I realised, because we've been talking about how ultra-processed foods are nutrient deficient, but in this case they were worked out so that the nutrient balance was the same. So what this tells us is that the actual processing of food, the sort of mechanical process of destroying a food so it's not in its whole form, also really upsets our biology, and it just doesn't recognize that food. So it's all about wholesome food. So to nurture our gut microbiome, we want to eat loads of different types of plants, but it's also really important to keep our diet nutrient dense. And we know that when we include animal protein in our diet, it's absolutely fine for our microbiome. So I can't stress enough that, eat plant-based. Yes, that's important. But it doesn't mean that we mustn't eat animal food. So at the moment, we do a survey in the UK every year. It's a rolling program, and it helps us to understand the intake of nutrients across all different ages of the population. Now, literally since we put this together, Russ, this information has changed. This slide is already out of date in the last month, but actually the picture has got much worse, unfortunately. So I'm just going to pick out a few. So at the bottom there, iron, almost 50%, almost half of teenage girls have an iron intake that's below the recommended intake, the lowest recommended intake. And that's huge in that population because these girls have the highest requirement of iron going through puberty. And as David mentioned, the World Health Organization have some of these micronutrient deficiencies as really grave health issues. So the fact that current dietary intake of iron is so low is really concerning. And we know that the iron level in food has dropped off by sort of between 50 and even 70% over the last few decades. Calcium, 20% are low. Omega-3, I really want to pick out at the bottom there because there's a really good news story for omega-3 with regeneratively farmed food. But basically, really very few of us probably get enough omega-3 in our diets, and it's a really vital anti-inflammatory nutrient. So it's really, really important. But really, this slide is just to show the concerns we have at the moment about nutrient density in our food. Here, I've just picked out some of the really great work that's been done by Montgomery and others, particularly in the USA, on looking into the nutrient density of food when it is farmed in nature-positive ways, where the soil health is just brimming with microbes, and we're really starting to see now emerging science coming through that the nutrients in these foods is really increasing. So in organic crops, we know that they are consistently higher in iron and really interestingly higher in what we call sort of bioactives, those antioxidants that are really health-giving micronutrients in plants. And it's just the reason I pick out antioxidants is because they're also like rocket fuel for our gut microbiome. The antioxidant in a plant is its own natural defense system. So if you're growing crops without using pesticides and fertilizers, the crop has to build its own resilience to protect it. So it increases the amount of antioxidants within itself, within the plant, and that's our food, and that's what we're eating, and those antioxidants are really vital in our health. So moving on to dairy, you can see at the bottom there that what we're beginning to learn is that organic grass-fed dairy, where the cows are out at grass for at least 200 days a year and eating forage for the rest of that time, that again higher in iron, vitamin E, really vital nutrient, but higher in omega-3. And in certified beef, that story, certified organic beef, that story of being higher in omega-3 is just absolutely incredible. And this was research that was done at Newcastle University, where they've mapped out the levels of omega-3 in right from conservation grade meat down to non-organic or grain-fed, and you can see that the more natural the diet of the cow, the higher the level of omega-3. And it's just I think all health professionals at the moment would say that we just can't stress enough how important it is to get that omega-3 in our diet. It drives heart health and it reduces inflammation in our body. So it's a really vital nutrient. It's very difficult to get enough omega-3 because getting the balance between these unsaturated fats, omega-6 and omega-3, is what's so important. And omega-6 is almost in every food. It's an important nutrient as well, but we get so much of omega-6, and omega-6 and omega-3, the way our body uses those nutrients, uses the same pathway. So if we're getting a lot more omega-6, we just can't process that omega-3 if we're not getting enough of it. So the more we can get of it, the better. And actually, the fact that we are starting to know that sometimes regeneratively farmed beef is up to 300 times higher in omega-3. I mean, it's a potentially really good news story. And the hope is that perhaps there's a possibility there that we could actually have that on labeling, that this meat is 30% higher in omega-3. So that's something that's a good news story for the future. So just to give a little bit of clarity around dairy then. So the next couple of slides, and then I'm finished, and we're going to look forward to a bit of a discussion, are the timeline of what we've started to understand about dairy food. So this is about all dairy food. This isn't just regeneratively or organically farmed dairy. In general, what we are starting now to understand from really robust science is that the saturated fat in dairy it works very differently to other types of saturated fat, and it's actually protective over heart health and conditions like type 2 diabetes. And this is fairly new science. It's not yet been integrated, this knowledge, into food policy, into health policy, but you heard it here first. So we will be seeing some changes about what we're advised. But over the last few years, there have been real changes in understanding how dairy foods can really benefit our health. And basically what we're understanding is that the fats in dairy are healthy fats. And it's important just to remember that even in whole dairy, it's only sort of 5 or 6% saturated fat at the top. So we're not talking about a fatty food here. So particularly whole dairy foods, fermented foods, cheese, when it's sort of eaten in balance. These are nutrient-rich, really important foods for our health. And if you think back to the other slide where we were seeing that up to about 20% of teenagers between the ages of about 11 to 18 are low in calcium, and that's so important when we're thinking about bone density. We're starting to see rickets again in children in this country because calcium uptake is an issue. And so, it's all good news about dairy. And there is no other food where we are able to absorb calcium as effectively as we can from dairy, because the whole food, all the nutrients in the food together work together to help our bodies to absorb it better. And then when we add to that the fact that if that dairy is in a nature positive system, then we've got an even better fat profile because we've got higher levels of those heart healthy unsaturated omega-3s as well. Then that's my good news story for you today. So we all make food choices every day. These food choices have powerful health potentials. That slide kind of just really summarizes what I've talked about. It's really interesting having listened to some amazing talks already today, and I'm looking forward to more tomorrow. One thing that I think is an interesting concept is that we keep talking about consumers as if we just consume what's out in front of us, and retail will just provide what consumers want. I hosted a Food Farming and Countryside Commission food conversation recently, and a key thing that came out from that is that the public don't want to be thought of as consumers. We want to be citizens, where we actually start to kind of feel proud of getting back to valuing food and the stories behind our food. And I think, if we think of ourselves as citizens and we're making these food choices, we can actually drive positive change to support farmers who so need your food to be valued, because at the end of the day we can't survive without your food. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. That's really helpful as well to see so much interest in what's being understood now about those foods. And as David just pointed out to me there, lamb is equally as good in those nutrients as beef as well. So we're going to go into some questions. We've got a roaming mic. If anyone wants to ask a question down here. Just whilst the mic is coming to you, I was going to pose a quick question insofar as a lot of the farmers here on stage we're talking a lot about soil health and animal health. And are we bringing enough of that into our own health, thinking about our own healthy system in the way that we're talking about with our farming systems? Are we being somewhat hypocritical by not addressing our own health first? And is there anything we should be doing to address that?
I'm going to answer that. That's why I came. I felt that farmers, you already know quite a lot about nutrition, but it's my hunch that you haven't often or not always implemented, as I found with Russ, you hadn't implemented what you know about animal nutrition with your own families. And there's a lot of talk. It's very interesting. If you look at a bag of feed, or if you're thinking about keeping piglets, well, you've got your starter ration, haven't you? And you know how much protein you're going to use and carbohydrate and so on. And then you've got your finisher ration, and you know then. And so farmers would know that carbohydrates are fattening, because you can't fatten pigs without them. And yet that same intelligence isn't always brought to bear on how you feed your families. And nothing is more important. Every clinic I do, I'm dealing with when it goes wrong and how sad it is. And people live in a fool's paradise sometimes. And bad news, medical bad news is really bad news. And so I felt how wonderful to reach out to farmers and add what I know about medicine with what you already know and what Russ knew, because I think the potential is amazing.
Good, thank you. So we'll take our first question over here, please.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to ask, in a practical terms, your clients or your patients, how you started them on the low carb thing. How did you manage to direct them to buy the food if they're consumers in a normal supermarket, access to the food?
Yeah.
And the second question, I'm going to cheeky in. Does the homogenization of milk have an impact on the quality of the fats?
Lucy, I'll take the first one, and Lucy. So the first one is about treating people as adults when they come to the doctors. So what I'm doing is maybe you've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I'm offering you a choice today. We could start lifelong medication, and the commonest drug I use is metformin, and that's got a 30% chance of diarrhea. I'm telling you the truth. So we could start that metformin today. Or I would really love to help you lose weight and eat better. Which do you want? I've only got 10 minutes. Tell me now. And do you see people treated adult to adult and given hope? I give them hope I'm saying, in 6 months, if you'll work with me, I could sort your blood pressure out. We'll get rid of your belly. You could be, you saw that Kirsten, who's the lightest for 32 years. So I'm giving relevant information, I'm giving hope, and I'm giving choice. And people are intelligent. And I find in my patients north of Liverpool, they are choosing lifestyle medicine, and they will try and find the right foods for them according to their tastes and according to their budget. The second question, I think, is more Lucy.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'm not aware really of any particular sort of research that shows from a health point of view the impact of homogenization on fats. I think sometimes it's important just to kind of keep a bit of simplicity in there, that the main fact is just that we know if we can eat whole dairy rather than choose semi-skimmed, if there's a cholesterol issue, that's about the only issue, David will keep me right here, where you do need to be careful about the fats in dairy. But other than that, no, still not even, no. Okay, we'll have to have a chat about that. But basically, whole dairy, is the way to go. And homogenization, it is a form of processing, and you are changing the actual kind of fat globules slightly, but I don't, as I say, I'd need to really check up on that as far as the impact on health, but I think it's very slim.
Okay, we've got our next question. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, is this on? Yeah. Hi, I'm Florence. I'm a journalist with Sustainable Views at the FT. I have a question around food policy, and particularly in light of the upcoming food strategy. You've framed a lot of this through the lens of personal choice and potentially personal failing. But we know that those kind of living in poverty in the UK are also those who are most affected by obesity. And I think, it would be wrong to suggest that that's like a personal failing on their part, and there are huge systemic issues here. So my question to you is what you would like to see from government on a policy front to help these people.
Great. This is like Christmas. You've made me Prime Minister. Well, I would make the government stick to their commitment to stop the advertisement of junk foods to children. Thank you. They signed up to that, and it would cost nothing. It would cost nothing. And the fact they have backpedaled on the television advertising of junk food to children shows the power of the lobby, and makes me very sad indeed. What else am I going to do? I think when we think about the food supply and what foods we might subsidize and where from, there are models in the world where whole foods were the things that were subsidized and made more available to nearby populations. And the idea of subsidizing what I regard as junk food, I think is wrong, and we should go for whole foods. I'd finally say that my poorer patients, I have a lot of patients on benefit, and they say that if you eat whole food, if you look at your budget and include what you're spending on fizzy drinks, on junk foods, and then you look at how you can eat, which is how my patients have done, they say it costs about the same if you include the budget. But we should make it, surely it's becoming so unfair, I agree, absolutely. And as you go north in England, the further north you go, the poorer people are and the heavier they are. Something's really, really wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I mean, it's the overweight and obesity. It's a societal, environmental, it's such a complex problem. But for me, the environment that people live in is a huge factor. That's I think where the government need to get a lot better with the policy they have in place there, because fast food outlets everywhere, people are tired, people are time deficient, they're on their way home from work, they don't want to go home and cook, and so they'll go past a fast food outlet or a corner shop and buy some fairly poor energy rich but nutrient poor food because it's so available and it's so accessible. And that's a huge problem, is the environment that surrounds us.
just to give you some. Oh, I think I'm on. Yeah, just to give you some hope. In the northeast of England, there was an experiment where one area stopped giving planning permission for fast food outlets, and the neighbouring area didn't. And what they discovered there was that obesity in the population, the more fast food outlets you have, it impacts. So there is something you can do with planning permission. The more these foods are available, the more people take them up. So that gave me a little bit of hope.
Can I just add one very quick thing? So in addition to that, I think that a key area is just education. So there's a team around Groundswell today who have submitted a white paper into government to try and embed food farming and sustainability into the national curriculum. And until we can have children leaving school valuing their food, recognizing veg, knowing what's in season, understanding how it's grown, it's going to be really hard to turn this around.
Okay, just quickly now, we've got 2 more questions this side, and then 1 more over here, and we're out of time, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'm in danger of mine being a little bit of a statement. I hope that's okay. You asked a question about who's in the room, teachers and education and farmers. I just wondered how many people in the room had been on a form of weight loss drug, Mounjaro, because I have, and I'm quite open about it. I've been on it for a year. I've followed many diets through my life. I've been overweight since I was 10 years old. I've done Weight Watchers, I've done Zoe, I've done Atkins, and most people would look at me and would now say that Mounjaro has been life-changing and has been incredible. And I think if used responsibly, and I do take the point, my prescriber will it's linked with my doctor. My doctor knows everything. They can see all the drugs I'm on. It has to go officially. I think it does need more regulating, but I still like the accessibility of it, because otherwise, I'm happy to pay for it, and it has actually worked really well. But I also think there are some people who really need it. So I have 3 children, and they've all been brought up the same, but yet 2 of them have really slim, very athletic, but the third one struggles with his weight massively. So, sorry, you obviously wanted to respond to that.
Well, I think you're just making a very good point. We are learning what is the place for these drugs. They are useful for some of my patients and not for others. One of the classes, so I have patients that every single diet has failed for them, and weight loss drugs have worked. In particular, there's some of my patients, the ones addicted to foods, really struggle, and they've been able to achieve things with these jabs they haven't been able to achieve any other way. But as we both agree, that the context has to be safe. And also, we've got to think about, at the moment, the licensing is only for 2 years, so that at the end of the 2 years, those people need support. We've got to look after them. So I agree with you. It's who are the people that would benefit? How are they going to receive support? And what's going to happen at the end of the 2 years?
And and I was just going to say, in support of your comment on, I went to Olivia Shave's presentation just now about the education in children, and I think it's almost like we should see the weight loss, the growth of weight loss jabs as an opportunity for us to be able to promote healthy, nutritionally dense food, and that the two can work in tandem actually very well, because the weight loss drugs are dangerous if they aren't used alongside a really healthy, balanced diet. So I think there is actually an opportunity, and I don't want it to just always be seen as a bad thing, because we always need to look at the positive. So,
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Like I said, more of a statement. Sorry.
Question over here, man with the cap.
Right, thank you, Russell. I know you're a good Hereffordian, and you enjoy your cider. Is your email address still ciderruss at something or other? Yeah. Yeah.
Under review.
Full disclosure, I know Russell. He's always told me that cider's part of his 5 a day. The question is, can we have a healthy relationship with alcohol as well as a healthy diet?
Yes, I think the answer to that is yes, you can. But so say my patients with type 2 diabetes, it's how much sugar is in. Don't drink stuff that puts your blood sugar up. So actually, in moderation, whiskey is fine, but don't add to it Coca-Cola. A glass of dry red wine is fine, or even a glass of champagne is fine, but it has to be in moderation and don't add sugary stuff to it.
Yeah, you'll also be pleased to hear that Tim Spector, our sort of UK gut health guru, has done some research on cider, and it also has some good antioxidants in it from the apples. Pairs nicely with cheese.
I should also disclose that Stephen here is an apple farmer, so... But it's a really interesting point, because I just in terms of what I've been doing the last couple of years and trying different foods and seeing how my gut responds, alcohol is not particularly helpful, and in moderation it's really key. I've noticed that it makes me hungrier. It makes me look for more food.
What I'd say is, for each of us, everybody has, my wife and I have different diets. What I would say is, notice yourself what suits you and what works, because for everybody in the room, there may be a slightly different perfect diet. And so notice your mistakes and don't beat yourself up about them, but do something different. And when you do something that works, or you feel your best self, do more of that. And you will refine, because the diet that's perfect for you as you grow older will change. So diet's a mobile kind of thing.
Great. Final question. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be brief. I'm one of those farmers who kept prize-winning pigs, but didn't look after myself until last year when I met David, and I'm now the lightest I've been for 30 years. On the homogenised milk, goat's milk is naturally homogenised, and I used to keep goats, and people used to come from all over to get the milk. Ozempic, isn't there a red wine? Isn't there a bit of something natural in red wine the same? But anyway, I'm just concerned that as a farmer growing oilseed rape, you see this cold-pressed rapeseed oil, healthy for us, allegedly. Sunflower oil, other seeds, palm oil, etc., all in these foods. Dr. Jen, she campaigns against all these things. My question is, how damaging to ourselves is rapeseed oil?
Can I take that? Is that okay? So, cold-pressed rapeseed oil, out of all the oils, has the highest amount of omega-3 in it. So when we're talking about that omega-3, omega-6 balance, cold-pressed rapeseed oil is an oil that I recommend, particularly if you're cooking at a high temperature, because it's not denatured at high temperatures. So that's a real benefit of cold-pressed rapeseed oil. The reason I always go cold pressed is just because we've not got the chemicals in that when you're processing the oils, and we're starting to understand that some of these chemicals can really start to impact the gut microbiome. So cold pressed rapeseed oil, good levels of omega-3, therefore it's helping us all to increase that level of omega-3. Sunflower oil is, all these oils in moderation are healthy oils. They're unsaturated fats. But the problem is that something like sunflower oil is used in so many different foods. If you go and buy oat milk and you think you're buying oat milk for a plant drink for a good reason, or whatever your reason is, it's probably got sunflower oil in there as well. And so my point with that is that with a lot of these seed oils, they're in so many different foods, and those are the type of oils that are much, much higher in the omega-6, which we're trying to reduce in our diet because we want to get more of the omega-3, which is the anti-inflammatory, heart-healthy fat that we need more of. So cold-pressed rapeseed oil is a good oil for that. Does that answer or help to answer your question?
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I hope you've really enjoyed our discussion and have a heightened interest in what you're eating, because it's so important, as I'm discovering, as we're all discovering. There's so much more to understand with our food and our diets. But thank you for joining us. And thank you to the panel, David and Lucy and Dave and our tech team. Thank you.